Now let's take a look at some of the other configuration that we have for this repository. So inside of our workflow file, we are going to be deploying this. So we have a few different steps that we're going to be following right here. And the purpose of this pull request is to detect something early. That is what the term shift left means, is that we're going to try and be taking care of something, especially security issues, at an early point so that they won't become a big problem later on. So we set everything up right here, and then we have the Trivy vulnerability scanner. So this is going to read through the infrastructure as code that I have, and it's going to tell me about problems that it sees with it. Now, this is very important right here. It says continue on error. So currently, the Trivy vulnerability scanner is finding errors, and it's telling me that I need to do something about it. But since I have it on continue on error, which is true, then it's going to continue. But if it were set to false, then that means that it would stop the pipeline and it would say, you need to resolve this before you are able to continue. So this is once again something, if you just want to test something, then you can set this to true. But in a real world situation, you would want to keep it to false to make sure that you don't merge something that you shouldn't merge. And then we have a code QL check, which is another security measure, which is going to be looking through my C# code, and it's going to be seeing about what types of vulnerabilities exist in there. And then the last few steps that it has right there, after it's gone through the security check, then it's going to try and build and deploy everything. So it's going to set up the GitHub action, it's going to get the .NET version, it's going to get the dependencies, and then it's going to try and publish the project. And then once it's done all of that, it's going to log in to our Azure subscription, and then it's going to try and deploy everything to the Azure Function app. So let's go over to the C# code that it's going to be getting, because what it does is that it comes over here to the source folder, and then it compiles everything inside of here so that it can be sent off. So these first few are just ways that it's all going to be compiled together. So we have the JIT access CS project, we have the program.cs project, host.json. This is used for gathering information. You can see we have application insights, which is going to be set to true. So that's going to be about gathering information. We have local settings, which I don't need anything, but it still is a file that should be here. And then we have the JIT access. This is one of the most important components that we have in this whole project, which is that it's going to be sending a request, and the request is then going to be read into this. It's going to read through the IP address, and then it's going to give them access to the SQL Server. So coming down here, it's going to say it's going to parse the request, handle if it's empty, it's going to define the role, then it's going to authenticate it in Azure, going to get the environment variables it will need, and finally, after checking all of that, it's going to make the firewall. And then it will give a message that will send back to the user saying, oh, you did it, access granted. And it's going to tell when it's going to be expired, and then also the role name that was given to it. And then this other one, which is going to be responsible for removing that rule that we just made for this right here. So this is the cleanup function right here. And it's automatically set up so that it's going to be triggering every 5 minutes. And there are ways to make it so that it triggers more frequently, but 5 minutes is sufficient. So when it detects that there's still a SQL Server IP address that is accessible there, it's going to tell us about how much longer it has until it expires. It's going to authenticate, get configuration, connect to the SQL Server resource. It's going to look through all of the different firewall rules. So it's going to determine about which ones are important and which ones are not. We use get all sync to scroll through all rules. Only look at rules that match the JIT pattern so we don't accidentally delete other rules that exist out there. We're also going to be checking for the format right here. And once we've gathered all that contextual information, we then need to see, has it expired? And if it has expired, then we need to give a message that is saying, this is going to be deleting it right here. And then we try to delete it. It specifies whether it was successful in deleting it or if it failed in deleting it. But if it went through all of that and it didn't have to expire, then it just gives it a message and says, this is how long it has until it has expired. So this is these are the two functions that are going to be running on our function app. And one of them is going to be creating the rule and the other one is going to be responsible for deleting it. And then when we, once again, if we go to our pull request right here, then it will tell us about whether the deployment was successful or not. So before we had the shift left security gate and the shift left build a deploy. So if we open this up here, then everything that we had in our pipeline, we can see here, we can look at these logs to see how well it did. I was able to log in to Azure and it's going to run the Azure function action where it's going to try and deploy everything to the Azure function app. And if this is successful, then that means our code was able to compile successfully. The Azure function app was able to get it from the storage account and it was able to run all of that. And it's working on Azure.